Yields back. The gentleman from Tennessee is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Durham, you were appointed by whom? Who recommended you and appointed you?
As the special counsel?
No, as the U.S. Attorney.
As U.S. Attorney. It was President Trump at the time, with 2 Democratic senators from Connecticut supporting the nomination.
Mr. Trump appointed you. Do you believe Mr. Trump has pretty good judgment on people, and their abilities, and their character?
I'm not going to characterize Mr. Trump or my thoughts about Mr. Trump.
Mr. Barr appointed you special counsel, is that correct?
That's correct.
Mr. Trump has called Mr. Barr a gutless pig, a coward, and a rhino. Which of those is correct, which isn't?
In my experience, none of those are correct.
So Mr. Trump isn't that good of an expert on character and judging people. In your opinion, he isn't, because he's none of those. He's not a gutless pig, but Trump says he is.
Yeah, that's outside the scope of my report.
Also outside the scope of your report, apparently. Also outside of the scope of your report was apparently the meeting at Trump Tower between the Russians and the Trump boys, where they talked about allegedly adoptions, but we know it was really about sanctions. How was that outside of your report?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't quite follow that.
Meeting at the Trump Tower, Russian attorney came to Trump, and Donald Trump Jr. was just wonderful, wonderful. We love it. We love it. Russian decisions to interact with the Trump campaign and influence the actions of the campaign, allegedly for adoption law, but really for sanctions relief. The FBI came up with that, did they not?
A meeting took place at Trump Towers on June 9th. The lure, as I understand it, was that there was derogatory information on Clinton that was going to be provided. They met, and as I believe in a HIPSI report, the HIPSI report fully laid that out, that the discussion then at Trump Towers was about adoption, not about anything relating to Mrs. Clinton.
It was totally about sanctions. You're trying to get rid of the Magnitsky Law. Adoptions is a ruse. Should you not have looked into that and seen what the Russians were wanting in return for that? Because that's the biggest thing Putin wanted at the time, was to get Trump to relieve his people of Magnitsky sanctions.
I think that Director Mueller investigated that, and I believe one of your House committees explored that. That was outside the scope of what we were looking at.
And it was outside the scope of your authority to look at Klimnik and Manafort meeting and exchanging polling data?
Was that out? I'm sorry, I'm not following your
question.
Manafort.
You remember Manafort, the crook that managed the campaign for nothing but got tons of money from different Russian people over the years that y'all pardoned? Mr. Barr later helped him with the commutation or a pardon, I think a pardon. Manafort.
I know who Mr. Manafort is.
Yeah, he met with Klimnik and they discussed polling data. You don't know about that?
No, that Mr. Klimnik met with a lot of people, including people.
He met with Manafort and discussed polling data. Do you not know about that?
I'm aware of that.
All right. Why did you then not think it was a good idea for you to look into it and see if the FBI wasn't correct in that there was collusion, a connection between Russia and the Trump campaign to elect Trump?
My assignment was to look at the conduct of the intelligence community agencies, not to conduct a separate investigation that was done by the House or that's done by the Senate or was done by Director Mueller.
You don't think that if the intelligence communities, the FBI, and others came up with this information and did good work, that should be part of your balanced report?
Yeah, well, I'm not following your question. I apologize.
Well, I've tried to follow your report. Mr. Donald Trump Jr. would have called it a nothing burger. Mm-hmm. You got no convictions. You got nothing. It was all set up to hurt the Mueller report, which was correct and was redacted, to hurt the Bidens and to help Trump. And you were a part of it. You have a good reputation. You had a good reputation. That's why the 2 Democrats supported you. But the longer you hold on to Mr. Barr and this report that Mr. Barr gave you as special counsel, your reputation will be damaged. As everybody's reputation who gets involved with Donald Trump is damaged, he's damaged goods. There's no good dealing with him because you will end up on the bottom of a pyre. I yield back the balance of my time.
Sure.
Can we presume the gentleman's undecided on how he feels about the former president?
Gentlemen, the witness can respond.
Yeah, my concern about my reputation is with the people who I respect and my family and my Lord. And I'm perfectly comfortable with my reputation with them, sir.
Well said. God bless you. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Wisconsin, Mr. Fitzgerald.
Mr. Durham, thank you for being here today. On October 3rd, 2016, the FBI met with Christopher.
Noes have it. The amendment is not agreed to. Who seeks recognition? Gentleman from California seeks recognition.
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will report the amendment.
Reserve a point of order.
Point of order is reserved. Mr. McClintock.
Amendment to the amendment in the nature of a substitute offered by Mr. McClintock, offered by
Without
Mr.
objection,
Schiff.
the amendment will be considered as read, and the gentleman is recognized to explain his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This amendment is simple. It would exempt individuals fleeing communist and totalitarian regimes from Section 104. We should exempt people fleeing communist and totalitarian dictatorships from this legislation and allow them to apply for asylum as our laws were intended. The underlying bill would bar individuals who cross the border between ports of entry from seeking asylum. This means individuals would be forced to wait in Mexico to cross the border and be processed. That would make people fleeing communist and totalitarian regimes sitting ducks for the cartels for exploitation, abuse, kidnapping, or murder. We have seen what happens when people are forced to wait in Mexico for too long. Under the Remain in Mexico program, there were over 1,500 publicly reported cases of murder, rape, torture, kidnapping, and other violent assaults against migrants returned under the Remain in Mexico program. In fact, just last month, we saw what happens when vulnerable migrants are put at risk, when migrants in an immigration center in Ciudad Juarez were left to be burned alive. This is not the fate we want for anyone, and we don't want people fleeing totalitarian dictatorships like people fleeing Venezuela or Cuba or Nicaragua or Russia or China or Vietnam or elsewhere to have to face those kind of dangers. There was a time when my colleagues on the other side of the aisle claimed to oppose communism and totalitarian dictatorships and welcomed people fleeing those horrible regimes. The underlying bill suggests otherwise. I urge my colleagues to join in this amendment so that those fleeing asylum are not put at those fleeing persecution by these communist regimes are not put at additional risk by having to wait for long periods of time in dangerous places before they can lawfully apply for asylum.
Will the gentleman yield for a question?
With that, Mr. Chairman, I'll yield back.
Will you yield for the clarifying question?
You could seek your own recognition. I'm going to yield back to the chair.
Gentleman yields back. Does the gentleman seek recognition?
I guess so.
The point of order is withdrawn, and Mr. Gates is recognized.
Thank you. I yield to the sponsor. If the sponsor would be willing to engage in a colloquy with me, would you consider the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to be a totalitarian dictatorship?
Mr. Gates, I give the same answer that Representative Lofgren gave before. These are not new terms of art. These are the terms used in current law. And so we are merely applying current law to protect people, and in particular, in this case, those that are fleeing communist dictatorships. If the gentleman, his objection is that this definition is overbroad.
No. Mr. Schiff,
you yielded to me.
I'm asking you a clarifying question.
If you would yield, if you would respond to my question, which is, if this amendment is narrowed to communist dictatorships, will you support it?
Well, again, Mr. Schiff, I'm just trying to understand what
your
amendment
answer is
says.
no, then, Mr. Gates.
Well, that you perhaps assume too much, my
then
friend.
Your answer
because
is
yes. I'm asking what you mean by totalitarian dictatorship and just whether the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia would qualify. It's just a yes or no question.
Well, I certainly think.
Forgive me for not knowing the list that Ms. Lofgren.
Would you like an answer, Mr. Gates?
I
certainly consider Saudi Arabia to be a dictatorship. Yes, I do.
A totalitarian one?
Well, Mr. Gates, my question is, if your problem with this amendment is you think it's
Mr.
overbroad...
Schiff, I'm not stating a problem with the amendment. I am merely asking you what it means.
My question then, Mr. Gates, is
what is the difference between a dictatorship and a totalitarian dictatorship?
My question...
Since Saudi Arabia is a dictatorship...
There is a difference between totalitarianism and dictatorship.
Well, sure, I'm asking you to explain the differences of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia.
That's really the question, Mr. Gates.
Why can't you just answer whether or not your amendment would apply to them?
Mr. Gates, this is just a rhetorical exercise.
It's a serious effort to understand whether or not your amendment applies to the kingdom.
If your question is sincere, which I know assumes too much, but if it is, then will you support the amendment confined to communist dictatorships? Yes or no, Mr. Gates?
I'm probably not going to support the amendment either way. That
well, there you go.
I don't want to know what it means.
Then what about all the rhetoric you constantly espouse about standing up to communism? Here you're saying someone fleeing communism, if they're interdicted between ports, then they will not qualify.
Right,
doesn't matter what kind of regime.
There is a mechanism by which one seeks asylum for those very reasons, and it's not showing up and creating an entire loophole in the asylum system. So this whole thing about Saudi
Arabia is just a red herring, right?
I'm just curious to know whether or not you consider them qualifying under the bill.
Your curiosity,
but I would
burned
appreciate 2.5 minutes.
Consistency.
Mr. Schiff, people on the border don't get to have a debate like this, like you and I do. It's not your time, Mr. Schiff. I'm reclaiming my time.
Mr. Gates has the time. Mr. Gates has the time.
You do.
Mr. Gates has the time.
Look, on the border, someone doesn't get to have this joyful little colloquy with you. A Border Patrol agent has to look at someone and assess whether or not they're going to let them in or not. And I'm just, for clarity, even though I'm not going to support your amendment, I'm going to support the bill. In the unlikely event that your amendment were to be adopted, I simply want to know if someone encounters someone from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, whether or not the exception that your amendment affords would allow that or not.
As I said, I'm using the existing definition, Mr. Gates. My question
does
to
that
you
definition
is,
include the
my
kingdom or
question
not?
to you is, will you live up to your
just have to answer
anti-communist
the
rhetoric?
question.
Will you live up to your anti-communist rhetoric, or is it just a lot of talk from you, Mr. Gates?
I don't think you have to blow a hole through the asylum system to oppose communism.
I guess it's just a lot of talk with you. Nothing more than a lot of empty talk.
I just want to know if the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is included or excluded. How is this so difficult for you?
Well,
do you have any compassion for the people who would have to make this assessment on the border? I just want to know.
Would you care for me to read the code section to you?
Gladly.
The existence of a single political party organized on a dictatorial basis with so close an identity between such party and its policies and the government policies of the country in which it exists, and the party and the government constitute an indistinguishable unit, and the forcible suppression of opposition to such party. That is how the code currently defines a totalitarian party
would you define Saudi Arabia
and a totalitarian dictatorship.
Would you define them that way or not, Adam?
So if you wanted to know, read the code. But the question is not,
the
question is not whether you can read the code. The question is whether you stand for anything, Mr. Gates. The question is, do you stand? Do you stand for anything? Does anything you say mean anything to you?
I merely am seeking your own ability to define your own amendment.
Are you really so soft on communism now, Mr. Gates? I am shocked.
Soft on communism? You're soft on definitions within your own bill.
You would prosecute.
Soft on the basics of the English language. Soft on the interpretation statute mechanisms by which a Border Patrol agent would have to apply this.
They won't.
You know what? A Border Patrol agent isn't going to have this.
Mercifully, the gentleman is out of time. Mercifully, the gentleman is out of time. Okay. Woo.
Should we have unanimous consent to continue?
No, everybody's out of time. Everybody's out of time. Does anyone
Never break, always fight, never quit, do it right, play the game, win it life, have no shame, there's no time, feel the pain, live the grind, I could change, in my mind, pick a lane, commit and climb, the only way to win it life. I never miss, that's fact, taking big swings, bitch, hand me the bat, put me in the ring, you'll go out in a bag, cause I sing what I mean and I bring it to the mad light. Ain't got time to kill, I got time to feel, I took the red pill, I know life's short so I wanna live real, but how's it supposed to feel? How's it supposed to feel? How's it supposed to feel? They wanna sing my name, but they holding back. They wanna say they hate, but they know it's cap. I ain't play no games, I just do that's fact. And I don't feel no shame, it's a mood you lack. I go crazy, nah bitch I ain't lazy. Track after track, I work on this shit daily. Pass me the jack, right as fuel, got me hazy. About to unpack all these things I've been chasing. I've got visions in my head, like memories after death. To be a legend instead of something you can forget. I'm living up every breath, I'd rather lead than be led. I'll fill the seats as I spread with every word that I've said.